So, hi. I'm going to look at a 3.5-year cycle in the S&P. This cycle goes back at least 120 years. I'm showing it back to 1950. I'm representing the 3.5 cycle with a 7-year cycle, because since 1950 the even and odd cycles behave somewhat different. So today we are at the green vertical line, and the corresponding timing in the previous cycles are also shown. In yellow here I also have a 6-month shifted index. Someone call that a FLD. I will also. Let's have a look how S&P behaved compared to the cycle going back in time. I am kind of cheating here, because at this time in 1950 they didn't have this forward data. Actually, what I'm having here, the cycle, that's the average detrended cycle going back to 1950 into 2022. So at this time they only had previous data up to 1950, and the average cycle probably looked a bit different, but we'll have a look at that some other time. So I'm not quite sure where this low was around 1950, but let's assume it was here. So I'm drawing the trend line of this current cycle. So I'm not quite sure where to put it this time. I would normally have put it like this maybe, but this was a very resilient extended cycle. So what I'm looking for is the trend to be broken and the FLD to be broken. So we are at the time for a top. We are finding support from trend line and the FLD, overextending, breaking the trend line but finding support at FLD, another high, breaking trend line, finally breaking the FLD, and we have a cycle low at the expected time. So we have a breakout again, another uptrend. Often we have a scary correction around here, not so much this time, and we are at the time for a cycle top. So we are overextending, starting to see weakness, but finally breaking down, finding support at the FLD, get another high before we break down, chopping around, having a downtrend, and here this would normally could have been a low, but we have a breakout and another breakdown. Quite unusual, so a very late low in this cycle. We have a breakout, another uptrend, we are reaching the cycle top, so we are starting to see weakness, breaking down, back testing, finding support at the FLD, finally breaking down, almost a double top here. So breaking down, chopping around, no panic, getting to the cycle low, we have a breakout, and at this point often a scary correction, which allows us to put the trend line at this point. Normally we should have the cycle top around here, but not so this time. We have a breakdown from trend and then the FLD, double low, quite an early low this time. Shouldn't trust it before we get to here or here, but we have the breakout and staying above. So we have the uptrend. Not quite sure where to put the trend line here, but this is where we normally would put it, around here. But this was a very long cycle because of the early low, so actually we are putting it here because we are not expecting the top until we get here, where we have breakdown, testing support, finally giving in, downtrend, quite early low, wouldn't trust it before we got to around here, but we have the breakout and staying above, and this would normally be too late for breaking down, so this is the scary pullback, a bit early this time. We have reaching the time for a top. We are having a bit early top here, almost double top, staying above trend line before breaking down. FLD and trend line, and we're going down to a quite normal timing for a low, and we have the breakout, the scary correction, which allows us to put the trend line here. We're reaching the time for a top, where we break down from trend and FLD, and we reach the normal time for a low, and we have the breakout, the scary correction, giving us this uptrend. And I must mention, these cycles always make all-time highs unless they don't, like here, and that's actually not bearish. One would maybe expect to get a lower high and a lower low, but that's not the norm. We rather get a triangle, a lower high and a higher low. So we're chopping around, breaking down, very overextended long downtrend here before finally breaking up. We have the scary correction, almost a double low here, so no real uptrend in this cycle. So what's going on here? Having trouble with breaking the previous cycle high, and also the going 2 cycles back. So at this point we should be at the top. We're starting to break down. Could have expected this to crash down, but we are finding a momentum at overtime here, and overextending to a very late top. It's difficult to put in a trend line for this whole cycle. So finally breaking below the FLD, and we have a very late low, unusual late low for this cycle, before finally breaking up. So we have very little time left in this cycle, so it's difficult to put in a real trend line here, but we are reaching the time for a top, chopping around, breaking the FLD, no panic, reaching a normal time for a low. We have a breakout and another uptrend. So the 1980s, we have the scary correction giving us the uptrend, but then we are not losing momentum but actually gaining momentum at the end of the cycle. Should have expected it to be here, the top of the cycle, but we are overextending up to here, so I'm putting in a steeper trend line. Finally breaking down, we have a very early low, wouldn't trust it before we get into here, but we are staying above. So the scary correction is a bit late here and left us very little time for a final topping formation. So chopping around trend line and FLD, breaking down, and we have a very early low, 1990. Wouldn't trust it before we get into this period, but we are having a breakout and staying above. No scary correction here this time, but giving us this trend line, starting to see weakness but no panic, staying above FLD before finally breaking down. 1994, a very shallow correction, just going sideways, and a bit early cycle low here, breakout. We have the scary correction here giving us the uptrend. Excuse me. So reaching the time for a top, but actually finding extra momentum at overtime, so we are overextending, putting in a steeper trend line before finally breaking down below the FLD at the normal time for a low, but actually not breaking this trend line